I will now take the sediment for this meeting of the Planning Committee held on 13 February 2024. The following members are present: Councillors Alec Allison, Ralph Barker, Arch Buchanan, Ross Clark, Jerry Convery, Margaret Cowie, Maureen Devlin, Colin Dewar, Mary Donnelly, with apologies from Councillor Joe Fagan. Councillor Elise Frame is present. We have apologies from Councillor Alistair Fulton, and Councillor Julia Mars is attending as a substitute. Councillor Celine Handybod is present. Councillor Graham Horn is not present. Councillor Ross Lambie is not present. Councillor Martin Lennon is not present. Apologies from Councillor Monique McAdams. The following members are present: Councillors Leslie MacDonald, David McLachlan, Richard Nelson. Councillor Norman Ray is not present. And the following members are present: Councillors John Ross, Graham Scott, David Shearer, Helen Toner and David Watson. Before I pass you back to the Chair, I would point out that the order of the reports in the papers does not reflect the order listed in the agenda notice, and I would apologise for any confusion that this has caused. I have spoken to the Chair, and the intention is to consider today's business in the order listed in the agenda notice. Thank you, and I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. And we'll move into today's business. As item number 1, is any declarations of interest? There's no declarations of interest. Item number 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting. These are submitted for approval as a correct record. Pages 5 to number 8 in your pack. I will move these as a correct record.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 3 is application P210540 is pages 9 to 16 in your pack. And it's installation of access gates for emergency vehicles with associated side panels that's retrospective at Uddingston Cricket and Sports Club. And I'll ask Fraser to give us a run through.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application was originally presented to the committee in August 2021, and at that time the committee asked for further consultation to take place with the relevant emergency services. In this respect, as set out in section 6.2, the Scottish Ambulance Service have stated that while their operatives would tend to use the main entrance to the sports club, this entrance could provide alternative access for patients on the playing field, and as such they didn't offer any objections. The early objections to the works are summarised in section 7.1, but in general it is considered that this proposal does not generate any overriding planning concerns, and as such it is recommended that, subject to the condition that seeks to restrict the access to emergency vehicles only, that planning permission should be granted.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Maureen Devlin.
Thanks, Chair. It's just I actually support this. I know the objections see it as something getting done undercover, but I have to say the cricket club is now used quite a bit for large gatherings, and the car park area can be full. If there is an emergency, this gives the emergency crews another option for entering and exiting the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Comments are noted. Any further questions or comments? No further questions or comments. I will then recommend we grant subject to the conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. And agenda item number 4 is application P221139 is pages 17 to 34 in your pack. It's the erection of 3 wind turbines with a maximum height to top tip of 149.9 metres and associated infrastructure including access track, crane pad, electrical housing and cabling, Muirkirk Road in Straven. Fraser?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application seeks consent for the erection of 3 turbines on a site south-east of Dungavel House in an area that covers some 9 hectares of plateau moorland that already contains several operational wind farms. 13 separate letters of objection have been submitted, and the details of this are summarised in section 7 with all of the letters available on the planning portal. But when assessing the representations within the context of the relevant development plan, as well as the responses provided by the various consultees, it is considered that the proposed development is acceptable. The full justification is set out in section 10 of the report, with the conclusion that, subject to the conclusion of legal agreements and the purifying of conditions set out on pages 23 to 32 of the papers in front of members today, that this consent should be granted.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. If there are no questions or comments, I will then recommend that we grant subject to the conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 5 is application P231076, and this will be in pages 57 to 64 in your pack. It's erection of roof extension to a bungalow to add additional floor to property and erection of 1.5-storey garage with ancillary accommodation, 21B Douglas Gardens in Uddingston. I will ask Fraser to present.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the application here seeks permission for alterations to an existing bungalow and the erection of a 1.5-storey garage with ancillary accommodation. The application site is within a residential area out with the Douglas Gardens Conservation Area. 10 letters of objection have been submitted against the proposals, commenting on potential issues with privacy, overdevelopment of the site and suggesting that the design is not appropriate. However, as set out in section 10 of the report presented to members, it is not considered that any element of the proposal would contravene the relevant development plan policies. This being the case, it is recommended that this application should be approved, subject to the standard time condition and the use of appropriate materials.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. If there's no questions or comments, I will then recommend to grant subject to the conditions.
I'll second that.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Councillor Horn, I believe you've just come into the meeting. Just to let you know that there has been a mix-up with some of the papers, and if you can just pay attention to the items that we're going through and the pages that we refer to by myself. We'll go to agenda item number 6 then, is application P231284, and that is pages 35 to 46 in your pack. That's the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of 4 detached dwellings, formation of access road and associated landscaping works and ancillary development, 83 Michael Wernick Road in Hamilton. Fraser?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application relates to a site within an established residential area, which previously housed 2 detached buildings, but which in recent times have fallen into a state of disrepair. Planning consent is now sought for the removal of the structures on the site and the erection of 4 detached properties with integral garages. 18 representations have been submitted in relation to the proposals, with 16 objections and 2 letters of support, but it is considered that the proposed form of development is acceptable when assessed against the relevant policies of the development plan. The assessment set out in section 10 of the report confirms that the principle of the development is acceptable, while at the same time there is no conflict with the relevant national and local development plan policies in terms of design, impact on the natural environment, access, or any other technical considerations such as drainage or climate change impact. Therefore, subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of the report and for the reason provided at section 12, it is recommended that application P231284 should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. I will then open up for any questions or comments, please. Councillor Helen Toner.
Thanks, Chair. I've been approached by a few people regarding this. It's in my ward anyway, and even though I'm not declaring an interest, it's actually like 5 doors up from my house. In principle, I don't have a problem with it. It is a derelict site and it really needs some sort of development done on it. What the sort of main concerns are, it backs onto woodland and grassland, and obviously it's the environmental impact that people are worried about. That's more like a comment that really the local residents are sort of really just sort of anxious that the development's not going to encroach on the local wildlife. But I think the main issue is the road itself. Michael Wernick Road is at the moment being used as a sort of trunk road to the development up at the top at Bracken Hill. There's been a big increase in traffic, in construction traffic coming down that road because the trunk road hasn't been made yet over to the Straven Road. And where the development is itself, there is very narrow footpaths as it is. There's a chip shop, it's very close to a roundabout. It's right adjacent to a pedestrian path that's got access to the to a local park. And it's just, in principle, it's a great idea to develop that site. We're just worried about, myself included, are worried about the sight lines for the traffic entering and exiting the site, especially when it is the construction traffic. And one is assuming that this won't be the sort of development that's got one car per property. You're going to have a number of cars coming in and out once the properties are actually inhabited. So it's really just a sort of question for like the roads department to work with the planning sort of thing, because that it's an accident hotspot. I know there's technically not very much, when you look at the police reports, there's technically not very much, but that roundabout is a concern, and there are a number of bumps on a regular basis, like just at the gate to that entrance to the development. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll ask Fraser Carlin to come in first, and then I'll ask Rhodes just to come in after that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, no, the issue around the protection of the open space was raised in a number of the representations. We were aware that there had been trees on the site that had been cleared previously. That wouldn't have required planning permission at the time. So that being the case is that we need to deal with the application as presented to us. There is one sycamore tree, I think, that's been removed, but there is going to be replacement species that are going in on the back of that. The area of open space that sits adjacent to the site will be protected, won't be subject to any development. So that the area here is just to the part at the front. Regarding the wider road network in the area, yeah, we're aware that it will have been affected by the community growth area in the past, and there is increased traffic in that, and the roads and the council will be aware of the issues with that. In terms of this particular application, though, for 4 dwellings, it wasn't considered that this would necessarily, it would be significantly adding to any problem that already exists within the area there. The sight lines have been conditioned so that they will need to be installed as part of the development. The access allows for forward entrance and exit from the site itself. There's parking within the development. So actually, in terms of the situation that exists there just now, it's probably what one would tend to expect within an urban area, that this won't necessarily add to it, won't markedly add to it. But certainly the wider impact of the traffic is something that we always have to be aware of as the council and as the roads authority, and we'll work with colleagues on that. But I would be inclined to think or I would suggest from a planning perspective, these additional 4 houses wouldn't add to that situation that already exists within the area, so it wouldn't provide justification to recommend a refusal of planning permission.
Fraser, from a Rhodes perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Fraser mentioned earlier, the sight lines are adequate. They meet the requirements from both the roundabout and looking uphill to the left, Meekillarnock Road. The 4 houses, again, wouldn't generate a significant number of trips, but it's worth noting that within the driveways and within the private access area, there is space for cars to turn so that they can enter and exit in a forward gear, so it does make it safer. It's worth also highlighting that the entrance to the development will be via footway crossover, so pedestrians will have the right of way, so they won't have another junction to cross. And in terms of the construction, there will be obviously some delays and deliveries made during the construction. I think as part of that, there is a condition which specifically mentions about the school making sure that there's adequate footway provision, because I know the representations that have been made talk about the school kids walking past that particular bit. But in summary, we're satisfied that the development is safe and won't add a significant impact to the overall area.
Thank you, Fraser. Any further questions or comments? If there is no further questions or comments, the recommendation, I will recommend that we grant subject to conditions.
I'll second that, Chair.
All agreed. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, please, which is application P231477. That is pages 47 to 56 in your pack. It's amendment to application site boundary, adjustment of driveway head, positioning of dwelling house, erection of fence and erection of detached double garage, retrospective, Mid Cross Hill Farm, Altus. And I will ask Fraser to present.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, as you say, the application seeks consent in retrospect for amendments to a development that was originally approved under previous applications that referred to a farm workers' house with associated structures. The changes to the consent now seek to regularise works that have taken place on site without the prior approval of the planning authority. And while this is not the preferred approach, it is considered that the changes do not introduce any elements or details that would bring it into conflict with the relevant development planning policies. 6 letters of representation have been received. These have been available to view on the planning portal, and a summary of the representations are provided in section 7. But in this respect, it is not considered that the proposed amendments would lead to a recommendation for refusal, as the development still accords with the local development plan and the national planning framework. Therefore, subject to the conditions set out in pages 52 to 54, it is recommended that planning consent should be granted for application P231477.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. If there are no questions or comments, I will recommend that we grant subject to conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 8 is any items of urgent business. I have no items of urgent business. Therefore, I hope you all have an enjoyable day. Councillor Ray, sorry you've just come in just at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.